Echoes of the Labyrinth, the final trial of time. Prologue, the Bermuda Triangle. A place of myths, mysteries, and stories that have traveled through time, often whispered in the shadows of disbelief. It was said to swallow ships, planes, and even entire fleets without a trace. But in the 28th century, with the stars no longer a distant dream but a reality under human control, the triangle had become more than just a legend. It was a place where the boundaries between dimensions thinned, a rift in the fabric of time and space. The skies above the triangle shimmered with strange energy. Forces far beyond human comprehension were at play, and yet mankind had barely begun to understand the true extent of the power that stirred beneath the waves. A galaxy-wide war raged on, with factions battling for supremacy. But none of that seemed to matter now. In the heart of that vast ocean, in the very center of the Bermuda Triangle, the stage was set for a storm like no other. The universe was about to tear itself open, and within the rift, two starfighters would collide, both trapped in a battle, unaware of the greater storm that waited to sweep them into the unknown. Chapter 1. The Eye of the Storm. The fighters' engines roared as Captain Aiden Blaze weaved through the enemy's gunfire. His ship, Reaper's Wrath, cut through the atmosphere like a razor blade, dodging blasts, even as the cockpit shook with each hit. His focus was sharp, his pulse steady. War was a constant companion, and survival was all that mattered. But this battle, this fight was different. His rival, Captain Naira Rook, was just as deadly. Her ship, Viper's Kiss, glided with an agility that made her almost impossible to hit. Aiden gritted his teeth, his fingers tightening on the controls. She was a worthy opponent, one he had battled countless times before. Yet there was something about today's fight that felt wrong, as though they were not just fighting each other, but something much bigger. "I will end you today, Blaze." Naira's voice crackled over the comms, filled with venom. "You'll have to try harder, Rook." Aiden shot back, spinning his ship to the left to narrowly avoid a blast that could have obliterated him. The war had been long, the galaxy divided into factions, yet the constant rivalry between Aiden and Naira always felt personal. She was a part of the Sabrin Syndicate, a ruthless group with no regard for life. Aiden, on the other hand, had always fought for the people, the ones who couldn't fight for themselves. Despite their differences, the hatred they shared for each other was mutual, deep, and unforgiving. But this wasn't just a war between them. It was a war between the stars, a war for control of a galaxy on the brink of collapse. The stakes were higher than either of them realized. Aiden's ship soared high above the ocean, his eyes momentarily scanning the endless expanse of water below. The Bermuda Triangle was not far now. It was said to be a place of strange energy, where ships disappeared without a trace. Rumors had circulated for years that it was more than just a patch of ocean. Some said it was a doorway to something else, something far more dangerous. "Blaze, don't tell me you're getting distracted now," Naira taunted, her ship closing the gap between them. Her voice dripped with mockery. "The battle's right here." Aiden's grip on the throttle tightened as he adjusted course. But then, something strange happened. The sensors began to beep erratically. The air crackled with static, and the skies themselves seemed to darken. The swirling clouds below began to churn and twist, as if the storm was awakening. "Something's not right," Aiden muttered under his breath, his heart pounding faster. Before he could react, the storm hit. The wind howled as lightning tore through the sky in arcs of violet and white. The temperature dropped dramatically, and the world around them seemed to warp. The familiar ocean below twisted into a monstrous mass of black water, as if the very sea had become alive. The energy in the air surged with unrelenting force, shaking both ships violently. "Blaze, look out!" Naira shouted through the comms, but it was too late. A blinding flash of light consumed them both. Aiden slammed his hands against the controls, trying to regain control, but the ship was pulled downward, and the world around him shattered. The storm tore at him, pulling him into a chasm of darkness. His ship, Reaper's Wrath, was no longer flying through the atmosphere. It was falling falling into an abyss where time and space no longer seemed to follow any logical rule. And then, silence. For a moment, Aiden thought he had been knocked unconscious. But when he opened his eyes, he found himself staring into an alien sky, one that was not of this world. Above him, the stars shimmered in unnatural hues, pulsing, with strange energy. The ocean had vanished, replaced by a land he had never seen before. Mountains rose in the distance, their jagged peaks shrouded in mist, and the air was thick with an electric tension. "This isn't possible," Aiden whispered, his voice barely audible in the vast emptiness. "Where am I?" His thoughts were interrupted by a familiar sound, Naira's voice cutting through the silence. This is your fault, Blaze," she spat, her ship hovering not far from his. She had survived the storm too, but they weren't in the same place anymore. They weren't in the galaxy they knew. "Looks like we're both stuck here, Rook," Aiden said, shaking his head. "Now we need to figure out how to survive." They were stranded in another dimension. The Bermuda Triangle had done its work. The storm had thrown them into an unknown world, where rules didn't apply and danger lurked at every corner. Naira didn't respond immediately. Instead, she scanned their surroundings, her eyes narrowing. "What is this place? What just happened?" Aiden's hand rested on the comms panel, his mind racing for any answers. "I don't know, but whatever it is, we have to stick together if we want to get out of here. We can't fight each other now. We need to figure out why we're here." There was a long pause, and then Naira finally spoke, her voice tense. "Fine, but only because I can't stand the idea of being stuck with you. We figure this out together, but don't get any ideas, Blaze. We're still enemies." Aiden couldn't help but chuckle, even though the gravity of their situation weighed heavily on him. "Agreed. We survive first. Then we settle the score." The storm had thrust them into this alien world, and now together they would uncover the secrets of the Bermuda Triangle and the truths that lay hidden within it. If they didn't, they might never return home. Chapter 2. The shifting Land's Aiden stood in the cockpit of Reaper's Wrath, staring at the strange world below. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, a heavy metallic tang that made his skin prickle. The horizon stretched endlessly, marked by jagged mountain peaks that seemed to rise like the spines of some ancient beast. The sky above, dark and violet with swirling tendrils of clouds, pulsed in rhythm with something deep beneath the surface, something ancient, something powerful. Naira's ship hovered just a few meters away, her sleek black vessel Viper's Kiss cutting through the air with eerie precision. Despite their uneasy truce, she didn't seem as distracted by their surroundings as Aiden. She was scanning the area, her eyes sharp, calculating. He wasn't sure if it was her instinct or her training, but she was ready. Aiden shook his head, his gaze fixed on the land below. "This doesn't feel like a random storm. We were brought here, this place. It's not just a rift in space, it's something more." Naira's voice crackled over the comms, cutting through the silence. "Don't start with your theories, Blaze. We need to figure out how to survive first. This isn't the galaxy we know. I can feel it too." He nodded, sensing the same unease. In her tone, the world around them was wrong. The laws of physics didn't seem to apply here, and every instinct screamed that the very fabric of reality was different. "Right. Survival first." Aiden checked his systems one more time. His ship seemed intact, no major damage from the storm, but the energy readings were off the charts. A low hum resonated through the hull, sending vibrations up through his boots. It wasn't something that could be explained by technology, no matter how advanced. "We need to land," Aiden said, his voice firm. "If we stay out here too long, we'll attract something. I don't trust this place." Naira didn't argue. She throttled down and dropped toward the ground, her ship's landing gear scraping lightly against the alien surface. Aiden followed, suit guiding Reaper's Wrath toward a flat area of terrain between two large, jagged rock formations. As his ship touched down, Aiden powered down the engines. The sudden silence was almost deafening after the roar of battle and the chaos of the storm. The air felt unnaturally still. He climbed out of the cockpit and took a deep breath, the atmosphere thick and humid, unlike anything he had ever felt. There was no telling how long they would have before the storm reformed, or something else made its presence known. But one thing was certain: they were not alone. Neera's ship landed beside his, and the hatch opened. She stepped out, her black suit hugging her athletic form, her eyes scanning their surroundings. Despite the tension between them, there was something about the way she moved, like a predator, always on guard. He couldn't help but respect her, even if he hated her. "So," Neera said, her gaze sweeping over the desolate landscape. "Now what?" "We find out what the hell is going on," Aiden replied, his tone steady but uncertain. "We need to figure out where we are and how we can get back." He moved toward the rocks, his boots crunching on the uneven terrain. The ground was jagged, covered with strange, glowing plants that pulsed faintly under the dim light of the violet sky. It was as if the world itself was alive, breathing in time with the strange hum in the air. Neera followed closely behind, keeping her distance but staying within earshot. "You think the storm brought us here? Some kind of interdimensional trap?" Aiden didn't answer immediately. His eyes narrowed as he inspected the glowing plants. They looked almost mechanical, an odd fusion of nature and tech. It was unsettling. "This isn't just a storm. I think it's a doorway. Or maybe a gateway." The air shifted again, sending a strange vibration through the ground beneath them. Aiden froze, feeling it deep in his chest. A distant rumble echoed from the mountains. It wasn't thunder, it was something heavier and closer. "We're not alone," Aiden muttered. Before Neera could respond, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and a sudden whoosh filled the air. From the shadows of the jagged rocks, something massive emerged, a creature unlike anything either of them had ever seen. It was a towering, hulking beast, its body covered in scales that shimmered with an iridescent sheen, reflecting the unnatural light of the sky. Its eyes glowed with an eerie blue hue, and its long, sinewy tail whipped behind it like a living whip. The creature let out a low growl that reverberated through the air, sending a shiver down Aiden's spine. Neera instinctively reached for her blaster, but Aiden stopped her with a hand on her arm. "Hold on. We don't know what this thing is yet," the creature moved toward them with a slow, deliberate pace. Its massive claws scraped against the ground, and as it drew closer, Aiden could see that its mouth was filled with rows of jagged teeth, each as long as his forearm. It was a predator. A deadly one. Aiden took a step forward, his hand still outstretched to keep Neera back. "We don't want to provoke it," he said, his voice steady. "Just stay calm." But calm was impossible. The creature's growl deepened, and in that moment, Aiden knew. The storm, the strange world, the creature before them, it was all connected. They weren't just trapped in another dimension. They were in a hunting ground. The beast paused in front of them, its head tilting as if analyzing them, its glowing eyes scanning them with intelligence. It sniffed the air, and then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it lunged toward them. Chapter 3. The Chase. Begins. Aiden barely had time to react. The beast's jaws snapped shut, inches away from his face, its breath hot and rank. The ground beneath his feet shifted as it lunged with terrifying speed. His instincts kicked in, and he shoved Neera backward, the force of his movement sending them both tumbling to the ground. The creature's roar echoed through the alien landscape, shaking the ground beneath them. Aiden scrambled to his feet, his pulse pounding in his ears. His hand flew to his sidearm, but in the back of his mind, he knew the weapon was no match for something of this size and strength. It wasn't just an animal. It was a predator. "Run!" Aiden shouted, grabbing Neera's arm and pulling her toward the rocks. There was no time to think, no time to fight. The creature was fast, faster than anything Aiden had ever encountered in battle. It was on them in an instant, its massive claws tearing into the earth with a screech of metal against rock. Neera didn't need to be told twice. Her boots hit the ground hard as she sprinted, her ship forgotten, her focus solely on escape. The air around them buzzed with tension as the creature chased after them, its footfalls thundering like a storm of its own. "Go left," Aiden barked, veering off toward a narrow crevice between two towering rock formations. He could feel the creature's presence closing in, hear the snapping of its jaws behind them. The path ahead was treacherous. Sharp rocks jutted from the ground, and the narrow gap between the cliffs barely allowed them to move quickly. But it was their only chance. The beast was too large to follow through such a tight space. The rumbling sound of the creature's footsteps grew louder. It was closing in on them. Aiden risked a glance over his shoulder. The beast was just a few meters behind, its glowing eyes locked onto them with relentless focus. It was hunting them. Aiden's heart hammered in his chest, but his mind raced. "We need to split up," he said, though he knew it was a risky move. Nira glanced at him, her face set in a determined grimace. "What? You're crazy." "It's our only shot," Aiden shouted, pulling ahead of her. "I'll draw its attention. You find a way to lose it." He didn't wait for her response. The plan was simple: draw the creature away from Nira, and hope it would be distracted long enough for her to find cover. It was a dangerous gamble, but it was their best shot at survival. Without looking back, Aiden veered sharply to the right, hoping the beast would follow. He fired his sidearm into the air, sending a volley of shots ricocheting off the nearby rock walls. The creature let out a blood-curdling roar, its focus shifting immediately toward him. Aiden gritted his teeth, adrenaline surging through him as he ran full speed, zigzagging between the rocks to confuse the creature. He could hear its massive paws pounding the ground behind him, the air thick with its growls. His mind was a blur of calculation. If he could just keep it distracted long enough for Nira to get away, they might stand a chance. He rounded another bend in the rocks only to find himself staring into a dead end. Panic surged within him. He couldn't go back now. The creature was too close. But just as it closed in on him, a sudden blinding flash of light illuminated the area. Aiden stumbled back, his eyes squinting against the brilliance. The creature roared in pain, its massive form stumbling backward. Aiden's heart skipped a beat. What the hell was that? He turned just in time to see Nira standing at the entrance of the crevice, her ship's blasters firing with precise accuracy. The blinding light was the result of a focused pulse from her weapons, disorienting the creature long enough for Aiden to regroup. "Go, Blaze!" Nira shouted over the comms, her voice sharp. "We've got seconds before it recovers. Run!" Aiden didn't need to be told twice. He darted back into motion, his legs pumping hard as he sprinted toward the gap between the rocks. Behind him, the creature let out a terrifying screech, the ground trembling beneath them. The sound of its pursuit grew louder again, but this time Aiden felt hope surge within him. They were escaping. For now. The two of them raced through the narrow paths, barely able to catch their breath as they weaved in and out of the rock formations. The creature's presence still lingered, its growls echoing through the air like thunder. "Where are we going?" Nira asked, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She had caught up to him, but her eyes were still scanning the terrain for any sign of danger. "We need to find shelter," Aiden said, his mind working rapidly. "A place to regroup and figure out what's going on here. We can't keep running forever." They came to a sudden stop at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a vast, chasm-like ravine. The ground dropped away beneath them, but far below they could make out the faint outline of what seemed like an ancient structure. A massive, ruined temple, its stone walls crumbling with age. Aiden's eyes narrowed as he studied the site. "That's where we're headed." "Are you out of your mind?" Nira snapped. "You want to walk straight into the heart of whatever this is?" "It's our best shot at answers," Aiden said, voice steady. "If we're going to survive. Here we need to understand what's going on. And that place, those ruins, might hold the key." Nira hesitated for a moment, her eyes flicking back to the dark horizon. But then she nodded grimly. "Fine, but we stick together. And if this goes south, I'm not dragging you out of another mess." Aiden gave her a half-smile. "Deal." They didn't have time to waste. The creature was still out there, its growls vibrating the air around them. They had no choice but to move forward. Together, they made their way toward the crumbling ruins, the ancient stone structure standing like a silent sentinel in the distance. But the closer they got, the more they began to realize that they weren't the only ones interested in the secrets it held. In the center of the light, something began to take shape. It was a figure, a shadowy, indistinct form that slowly became more defined. The figure was tall, humanoid, but its features were blurred, as if it were made of pure energy. A being, woven from the fabric of the temple itself. A voice, ancient and filled with authority, reverberated through the chamber. "You have come, but you are not yet ready." Aiden's breath caught in his throat. The voice felt as though it resonated inside his very soul. It wasn't speaking to them as mere mortals, but as if they were intruders in something far older than time itself. "We seek answers," Aiden said, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "We need to know why we're here. How do we get home?" The figure's eyes, if they could even be called eyes, glowed a deep, unsettling blue, and the voice echoed again, this time colder, more powerful. "The storm has chosen you. This is not your home, and it will never be. Your presence here has set in motion a chain of events that cannot be undone. To return, you must understand the curse that binds this place. The secrets of the triangle are not meant to be uncovered." Naira stepped forward, her gaze sharp, unwavering. "We don't care about your curse. We just want to leave. If you know how, tell us." The figure's form flickered, its outline shimmering, as if being pulled by some unseen force. "The curse is not mine to give," it said, its voice rising with an unnatural finality. "You must first prove yourselves. Only then will you understand the price of your journey." Before Aiden could respond, the light from the altar intensified, filling the chamber with a blinding glow. The ground beneath them began to shake, and the walls seemed to ripple as if the very fabric of reality was bending around them. The figure's voice boomed one last time as the light swallowed them whole. Survive the trials or be consumed by them. Then everything went black. Nira's hand grabbed his arm, pulling him out of the haze. "Blaze, stay focused. It's messing with your head. We can't give in to it." Aiden shook his head, trying to clear the fog. I know. It's like this place is alive. It knows us, knows our fears." He looked at Nira. "We have to be careful. It's trying to break us down piece by piece." Naira nodded sharply. "Then we don't give it the satisfaction. We keep moving forward." But the deeper they went, the more real the voices seemed. They echoed from the walls, growing louder, twisting with malice and doubt. "You'll fail. You'll never find the way. There's no way out, no way home." The shadows on the walls began to shift, taking on a life of their own, flickering and twisting as if they were following them. Figures moved just beyond the edge of the light, too quick to be seen clearly, but always there, lurking in the darkness. Aiden's pulse quickened. He wasn't sure how much further they could go before this place broke them. He had never faced anything like this before. No war, no enemy, no mission had ever tested him like this. And then, the voice spoke again, this time not in whispers but in a slow, deliberate tone, speaking directly into his mind. "What will you do, soldier? Will you fight, or will you give in?" Aiden froze. For a moment he thought he might lose himself to it, but then as though it had always been there, he heard a voice, clear, strong, unwavering, cutting through the confusion. It was Naira. "Not today, Shadow," she said firmly, her voice filled with resolve. "Not today," Aiden snapped back. To himself. The weight in his chest lifted, just enough to keep him from sinking into the abyss of doubt. He glanced at Nira, who was staring ahead, her eyes fixed on the path before them. "Let's finish this," Aiden muttered, his resolve firming. Together they pushed forward through the darkness, the whispers, and the shifting shadows. Chapter 4. The Temple's Curse. The ruins loomed ahead like the bones of some forgotten civilization, half swallowed by the ravine, as though nature itself had tried to erase them from memory. Aiden and Naira approached cautiously, their boots crunching over the uneven ground, the air thick with the smell of ancient stone and decay. The temple, if it could even be called that, was a massive structure, its crumbling stone pillars towering. Above them, symbols, strange and unfamiliar, were etched into the surface, glowing faintly in the dim light that seemed to emanate from the very air around them. A shiver ran down Aiden's spine. The closer they got, the more he could feel it, an oppressive energy, thick with the weight of time, as though the very foundation of the temple was alive, pulsing with a malevolent force. This place wasn't just old, it was ancient and dangerous. Neera's hand instinctively went to the blaster at her side, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. She had been through enough to know that wherever there was something ancient, there was almost always something dangerous lurking nearby. "We need to be careful," Aiden said, his voice low. "Whatever's in there, it's not just a ruin. I don't think we're supposed to be here." "Brilliant observation, Blaze," Neera replied, her tone dry but her eyes still wary. "Let's just hope this place has answers, and not more of those creatures." The distant roar of the beast they had narrowly escaped still echoed in the back of Aiden's mind. It had followed them for what felt like hours, only to be distracted by the blinding pulse from Neera's ship. They couldn't afford to stop, not yet. They had to get inside the temple before the creature or something else found them again. The entrance to the temple was a massive archway, partially collapsed but still standing. Vines and strange moss crawled over its surface as if the land itself was trying to reclaim it. The air grew colder as they stepped closer, and the stone seemed to hum beneath their feet. "You're sure this is a good idea?" Neera asked, her eyes narrowing as she examined the dark passage ahead. "Because I'm starting to think that the storm was the least of our problems." Aiden looked at her, his face grim. "It's our only choice. We're not getting out of here without understanding what's going on. And if there's anything that can help us figure that out, it's in there." Neera hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Fine. Lead the way, Captain." Aiden took a deep breath and stepped forward, the stone cold beneath his boots as he crossed the threshold into the temple. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of ancient decay. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, each telling a story he couldn't begin to understand. They seemed to twist and writhe as though alive, their meaning hidden beneath. Layers of time and forgotten language. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing off the stone. The faint light from outside seemed to fade the further they ventured, and the walls seemed to close in on them, a suffocating weight pressing down on their shoulders. Finally, they came to a large chamber at the heart of the temple. It was vast, its high ceiling lost in the shadows above. In the center of the room stood a massive stone altar, covered in dust and cobwebs. Around it, there were more carvings, symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint, eerie glow. Aiden approached, cautiously, his heart beating faster with each step. Something was here, something ancient. He could feel it in the air, the way it vibrated with power, as if the very walls were alive with energy. "Do you feel that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Neera's eyes were wide as she scanned the room. "Yeah, I feel it. It's like the place is alive." The air around them crackled with energy, and Aiden instinctively reached for his blaster, though he knew it would be useless against whatever was lurking here. There was something in the room, something unseen but deeply present. The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, as though the temple itself was awakening from a long slumber. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the chamber, and the stone altar shifted, its massive surface grinding against the floor with an eerie, grinding noise. Aiden froze, his pulse quickening. Then, without warning, a beam of blinding light shot upward from the center of the altar, illuminating the entire room in a brilliant white glow. The symbols on the walls flickered to life, their eerie light dancing across the stone. "What the hell is this?" Neera hissed, stepping back. Aiden couldn't answer. His mind raced as the beam from the altar grew brighter, casting shadows that seemed to move and shift, like something was emerging from the depths of the temple. The glow intensified, and the air seemed to warp around them. In the center of the light, something began to take shape. It was a figure, a shadowy, indistinct form that slowly became more defined. The figure was tall, humanoid, but its features were blurred, as if it were made of pure energy, a being woven from the fabric of the temple itself. A voice, ancient and filled with authority, reverberated through the chamber. "You have come, but you are not yet ready." Aiden's breath caught in his throat. The voice felt as though it resonated inside his very soul. It wasn't speaking to them as mere mortals, but as if they were intruders in something far older than time itself. "We seek answers," Aiden said, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "We need to know why we're here. How do we get home?" The figure's eyes, if they could even be called eyes, glowed a deep, unsettling blue, and the voice echoed again, this time colder, more powerful. "The storm has chosen you. This is not your home, and it will never be. Your presence here has set in motion a chain of events that cannot be undone. To return, you must understand the curse that binds this place. The secrets of the triangle are not meant to be uncovered." Naira stepped forward, her gaze sharp, unwavering. "We don't care about your curse. We just want to leave. If you know how, tell us." The figure's form flickered, its outline shimmering, as if being pulled by some unseen force. "The curse is not mine to give," it said, its voice rising with an unnatural finality. "You must first prove yourselves. Only then will you understand the price of your journey." Before Aiden could respond, the light from the altar intensified, filling the chamber with a blinding glow. The ground beneath them began to shake, and the walls seemed to ripple as if the very fabric of reality was bending around them. The figures' voice boomed one last time as the light swallowed them whole. Survive the trials or be consumed by them. Then everything went black. Chapter 5. The Trials of the Triangle. When Aiden regained consciousness, he felt a strange sensation, like his entire body had been transported into a vast, weightless space. His vision swam in and out of focus, and for a moment he wondered if he was still trapped in the temple's strange energy. But as his mind cleared, he realized he was standing, not floating, on solid ground. The air around him was thick, heavy, and warm. The atmosphere hummed with an intensity that rattled his bones. The sky was the same eerie violet they'd seen earlier, but now it was streaked with bright flashes of light, as though distant storms raged on some far-off horizon. A faint pulse echoed in the distance, sending ripples through the air. "Blaze." Naira's voice came through the comms, shaky but clear. "You okay?" Aiden blinked, taking in his surroundings. He was standing in the middle of a vast, barren landscape, a stretch of cracked earth that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The air was filled with an unsettling stillness, and the only sounds were the distant rumbles of something far beyond their reach. "I'm fine," he said, wiping the dust from his face. He could feel the heat of the ground beneath him, but there was something unnatural about it, like the temperature was too constant, too controlled. The faint pulse of energy still reverberated through the air. But now Aiden noticed something else. In the distance, the cracked earth began to break apart, as if some invisible force was at work beneath the surface. The ground shifted, and jagged columns of stone began to rise from the earth, creating a labyrinth of twisting, broken pathways that seemed to stretch out toward an unknown horizon. "It's happening again," Naira's voice crackled in his. "You're filled with frustration and confusion. Where are we? What is this place?" Aiden swallowed hard, trying to make sense of their new surroundings. This is part of the curse," he muttered, his eyes scanning the land. The pulse, the movement of the ground, it all pointed to one thing. They had been dropped into some kind of trial. A test, perhaps, to prove their worth before they could return home. He didn't have time to consider the implications further. A deep rumble tore through the ground beneath him, and suddenly, the stone columns around them began to move, shifting and rearranging like some massive puzzle. Each stone seemed to align into intricate patterns, glows of deep blue light tracing their paths. "What the hell is that?" Naira demanded. Before Aiden could respond, the ground beneath him cracked open, and a colossal figure rose from the depths. It was a massive, towering construct, made of solid rock and ancient symbols, its form both mechanical and organic, a hybrid of technology and nature. The creature's eyes glowed with the same eerie blue light as the markings on the stone, and its form shifted with a strange fluidity, as if it were constantly changing. "An obstacle," Aiden said, his heart racing. "We're being tested. This is the first of the trials." Naira cursed under her breath. "I hate being someone's test subject." The construct's movements were slow, deliberate, but powerful. As it stepped forward, the ground trembled beneath its feet, sending waves of dust and rock into the air. Its voice, deep, metallic, and cold, resonated across the broken landscape. "To survive the trials, you must conquer that which stands before you. Fail, and you shall remain here forever." Aiden's jaw tightened. He knew they had no choice but to face this creature. The alternative, being trapped in this forsaken place forever, was too horrifying to even consider. The creature's massive stone fist swung downward, sending a shockwave through the air that knocked Aiden off his feet. He barely managed to roll to the side, the ground shaking with the impact. Nira was already on her feet, drawing her blaster and firing several shots toward the creature's chest, but the energy blasts simply bounced off its rocky exterior, doing nothing to slow it down. "This thing is immune to our weapons," Nira shouted. Aiden's mind raced. If brute force wasn't going to work, they needed to outthink it. The creature was ancient, a guardian of some kind, but its movements, while powerful, were predictable. "Get to higher ground," Aiden shouted. "Use the columns for cover." Without waiting for a response, he sprinted toward one of the rising stone structures, his mind calculating the creature's next move. The columns were shifting around them, but some had already solidified into place, forming narrow paths and higher platforms. If they could get above the creature, they could use the terrain to their advantage. Naira followed, taking the same path up. The creature roared again, this time raising its massive fists to smash down on the ground. Aiden could hear the weight of its blows as they cracked the earth beneath him, but he kept moving, his legs burning with effort. "Are you seeing this?" Nira gasped as she reached his side, breathless but determined. "It's like the whole place is alive." Aiden didn't have time to answer. The creature's massive hands shot out, smashing into the stone columns near them. The shock waves from the impact sent a massive wave of dust and debris into the air, and Aiden instinctively ducked, his heart racing. The ground beneath their feet began to crumble as the creature moved closer, its glowing eyes locking onto them with deadly intent. It was closing in fast. "Blaze, we don't have much time," Naira said, her voice tight with urgency. "How do we stop this thing?" Aiden's mind snapped back to the ancient markings they'd seen earlier. There was something about them, something that didn't make sense. As the creature raised its fists to strike again, Aiden shouted, "The symbols! Look at the markings on the columns! They're the key!" Nira's eyes followed his gaze and she nodded quickly. The markings weren't just decorations. They were part of the trial. The glowing blue symbols pulsed in time with the energy from the creature, suggesting a link between the two. Aiden gritted his teeth. "We need to activate the symbols. That's the only way to stop this thing." Without wasting a moment, Aiden scrambled up the nearest column, Nira close behind. They each stood near one of the glowing symbols carved into the stone. Aiden reached out, placing his hand on the symbol. The moment he did, a surge of energy rushed through him, like electricity, coursing through his veins. The light from the symbol grew brighter, and the ground beneath them trembled once more. "Now!" Aiden shouted. Together, they pressed their hands firmly against the glowing symbols. The energy in the air crackled as the stone beneath their feet began to hum. The creature paused mid-strike, its glowing eyes flickering. For a moment, everything was still. Too still. And then, with an earth-shaking roar, the creature collapsed, its massive form crumbling into stone, the energy in its body dissipating. The ground beneath Aiden and Naira stabilized, the pulse in, the air dying down. They were breathing hard, sweat dripping down their faces. But they had survived the first trial. "That was just the beginning," Aiden muttered, his voice hoarse from the adrenaline. There are more to come. Naira wiped her brow, still catching her breath. Great. I love a challenge. Aiden couldn't help but smirk. You might change your... Soon once we get through this, let's move. There's no telling what comes next. Together, they turned back toward the horizon, where the jagged stone paths led deeper into the unknown, each step forward bringing them closer to the next trial. Chapter 6. The labyrinth of shadows. Aiden and Naira stood at the edge of the crumbled battlefield, the remains of the massive creature's body scattered in chunks across the cracked earth. The air was thick with the scent of ancient stone and the lingering hum of energy from the recently deactivated Guardian. Their hearts were still pounding from the battle, but there was little time to rest. The ground beneath them felt unstable, shifting in ways that only reinforced the sense that they were being watched. You think it's over? Dira asked, her eyes scanning the horizon. The violet sky above them flickered with eerie streaks of lightning, casting long shadows across the land. That thing was just the first test. The voice in the temple, this place. It all feels like a setup, like we're supposed to fail. Aiden clenched his fists, the faint glow of the symbols they'd activated still pulsating in the back of his mind. The creature they had just faced had been monstrous, but it was only a hint of what they would encounter as they moved forward. Each step in this place seemed to pull them deeper into some grand design, a labyrinth of challenges they couldn't yet understand. We don't have the luxury of thinking it's over, Aiden said. We'll keep moving. The trials aren't done, and they won't stop until we've passed them all. He turned away from the wreckage, motioning for Naira to follow. The path ahead was narrow, lined with jagged stone columns that reached high into the violet sky. The ground stretched out before them in uneven, jagged formations, the earth cracking with unnatural precision, almost as though it had been carved by something ancient and far beyond their understanding. For a long moment, neither spoke. The distant rumble of thunder and the faint hum in the air reminded them that this place was alive, and they were its unwelcome guests. Then, something shifted. The ground trembled beneath their feet once more. This time, it wasn't the violent force of an attack. Instead, it was a subtle, insistent motion, as though the land itself was breathing beneath them. A low, resonating sound filled the air, almost like the whisper of a voice, faint but unmistakable. Do you hear that? Naira asked, stopping dead in her tracks. Aiden nodded, his instincts immediately on edge. Yeah, it's coming from... ahead. Stay sharp. They moved cautiously, their every step accompanied by the sound of low whispers, growing louder with each passing moment. The path in front of them twisted and turned, leading deeper into the heart of the land. What should have been a direct route felt like a maze, each turn, each new section of the trail adding layers of uncertainty. Finally, they arrived at the entrance to a vast chasm. The mouth of it was like the gaping maw of some beast, wide and dark, shadows spilling from within. A dense mist swirled at its edges, obscuring the path that led deeper into the abyss. This is it, isn't it? Naira murmured, her voice barely audible as if speaking too loudly would wake something terrible. The labyrinth. Aiden couldn't answer. His eyes were locked on the entrance, his mind already racing through the possibilities. The voice had mentioned trials, tests of survival. But this place, this was different. This was no battle with a creature of stone or flesh. This was something deeper, darker. The air around them seemed to grow colder, the mist thickening until it became difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. Aiden stepped forward, instinctively reaching out. For Naira, his hand brushing hers for reassurance. The labyrinth wasn't just a physical challenge. It was a psychological one. The whispers, the shifting shadows. It was as though the very walls of the chasm were trying to trap them in fear. You ready? Aiden asked, though he wasn't sure if he was asking Naira or himself. Yeah, she replied, her voice steady, despite the tension. Let's get this over with. With that, they stepped into the darkness, the air growing even colder as they descended into the labyrinth. The walls on either side were slick with moisture, ancient runes carved into the day. Stone glowing faintly as they passed. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the silence became. The only sound was their own breathing, the crunch of their boots on the uneven ground, and the soft whisper of the wind as it passed through the labyrinth's narrow passageways. And then, just as they thought they were starting to adjust to the gloom, the whispers began again. Only now, they weren't just in the air around them. They were inside their heads, seeping into their thoughts like a poison. "You are lost. You will never find the way out. Turn back. There is no escape." Aiden clenched his jaw, pushing the voice aside, but it persisted. "Do you even remember why you're here? Why you came? You've already failed." He stopped, walking, his heart racing as the whisper turned into a sharp, piercing voice that seemed to come from all directions at once. "You're not meant to survive this." Naira's hand grabbed his arm, pulling him out of the haze. "Blaze, stay focused. It's messing with your head. We can't give in to it." Aiden shook his head, trying to clear the fog. I know, it's like this place is alive. It knows us, knows our fears." He looked at Naira. "We have to be careful. It's trying to break us down, piece by piece." Naira nodded sharply. "Then we don't give it the satisfaction. We keep moving forward." But the deeper they went, the more real the voices seemed. They echoed from the walls, growing louder, twisting with malice and doubt. "You'll fail. You'll never find the way. There's no way out, no way home." The shadows on the walls began to shift, taking on a life of their own, flickering and twisting as if they were following them. Figures moved just beyond the edge of the light, too quick to be seen clearly, but always there, lurking in the darkness. Aiden's pulse quickened. He wasn't sure how much further they could go before this place broke them. He had never faced anything like this before. No war, no enemy, no mission had ever tested him like this. And then, the voice spoke again. This time not in whispers, but in a slow, deliberate tone, speaking directly into his mind. "What will you do, soldier? Will you fight, or will you give in?" Aiden froze. For a moment he thought he might lose himself to it. But then, as though it had always been there, he heard a voice, clear, strong, unwavering, cutting through the confusion. It was Naira. "Not today, Shadow," she said firmly, her voice filled with resolve. "Not today." Aiden snapped back. To himself, the weight in his chest lifted, just enough to keep him from sinking into the abyss of doubt. He glanced at Naira, who was staring ahead, her eyes fixed on the path before them. "Let's finish this," Aiden muttered, his resolve firming. Together they pushed forward through the darkness, the whispers, and the shifting shadows. Chapter 7. The Heart of the Labyrinth. The deeper they ventured into the heart of the labyrinth, the more disorienting it became. The whispers had quieted, but something far worse had replaced them. It was an eerie, oppressive silence, the kind that presses against your chest, making it hard to breathe. The shadows twisted in ways they shouldn't, stretching and writhing like they were alive, and the air felt thick, alive with something ancient and malevolent. Aiden's mind was sharp, but the oppressive atmosphere was beginning to cloud his judgment. The walls seemed to shift, and the ground underfoot had a rhythm like it was pulsing with some dark heartbeat. It was as if the labyrinth itself was breathing, a living entity that was aware of every step they took. "Keep your head on straight," Naira said, her voice low but steady as though she sensed his growing unease. "The moment you let it get inside your head, it wins." "I know," Aiden replied, pushing forward, but his footsteps felt heavier with each one. "But this place, it's getting harder to ignore." They turned a corner, and suddenly, the path before them split. To the left, a narrow, dark tunnel twisted into the shadows. To the right, a wider corridor stretched on, bathed in an ominous red glow. Aiden stopped, his gaze flicking between the two paths, and for a moment he was paralyzed by indecision. "This is it, isn't it?" he muttered, his throat dry. "The choice, the real test." Naira didn't answer immediately. She stepped forward, glancing at both tunnels. "The whispers warned us. They said there's no escape. Maybe they're trying to break us down, make us choose the wrong path." Aiden's fingers tightened around his weapon. The air in the right-hand corridor was heavy, but there was something magnetic about it. The glow pulsed with a strange energy, like a beacon. I'm not so sure, he said, his instincts suddenly clearer. We need to choose the one that feels wrong, the one that feels dangerous. That's the one that will lead us to the heart of the labyrinth. Naira's brow furrowed. I'm not sure that's wise. I've been in places like this before, Aiden said, the confidence creeping back into his voice. The right path isn't always the safe one. Without another word, they chose the red glowing path. The temperature rose as they entered, a heavy sulfurous heat swirling around them. The light from the glow seemed to distort, bending the walls into shapes that didn't quite match reality. And the further they went, the more it felt like they were descending into the bowels of something ancient. They had barely gone 100 yards when the air around them seemed to grow thicker, as though the darkness itself was trying to cling to them. The ground became slick, the floor shifting underfoot as if the stones themselves were trying to pull them down. Suddenly, the path widened, and before them, a massive chamber opened up, the size of a vast coliseum. In the center stood a statue, a gargantuan figure made of dark, polished stone, towering over them, its eyes glowing with an unholy red light. Its face was twisted in a grotesque expression, half human, half beast, caught forever in a scream of pain and rage. Aiden's breath caught in his throat. The moment they stepped into the chamber, the temperature plummeted and the ground trembled. This isn't just a statue, Naira whispered, her voice tinged with awe and fear. It's alive. The red light in the statue's eyes flared brighter. The room seemed to contract, the walls narrowing, and suddenly there was a sharp grinding noise, like stone scraping against stone. The statue's arms moved slowly, almost mechanically at first, but then with growing speed. The creature was waking. Aiden's instincts kicked in. Move! They dove out of the way as the massive stone hands of the statue crashed down where they had just been standing. Dust and debris filled the air, choking them as they scrambled for cover behind the nearest columns. Why aren't the symbols working? Naira shouted. Why isn't the magic stopping it? Aiden gritted his teeth, analyzing the situation. The statue was an ancient guardian, a trap designed to protect whatever lay at the heart of this place. They needed to act fast. This creature was far more than just an obstacle. It was the key to unlocking the next trial. I don't think we need the symbols, Aiden said through clenched teeth, taking cover behind a shattered column. We need to fight it, directly. The stone guardian's eyes glowed brighter, the statue's massive form rumbling as it began to rise, each movement sending tremors through the chamber. It was clear that the statue had once been a formidable weapon, an ancient guardian forged from the very bones of the labyrinth. I've got an idea, Aiden said, his mind working in overdrive. We need to find a weak point, somewhere specific. Look for cracks, weaknesses. Chapter 8. The Gate of Time. The moment Aiden's hand made contact with the glowing crystal, the air around him thickened, almost as though time itself was stretching. The light of the crystal pulsed, each beat synchronizing with the rapid thrum of his heart. A low rumbling began in the very core of the labyrinth, and the ground beneath their feet trembled as though it, too, could feel the weight of what was about to happen. Aiden, something's wrong, Naira said, her voice taut, with anxiety as she stepped closer to him. Her eyes flicked nervously toward the walls, now covered in a thick mist that swirled and undulated as if alive. I don't think this is just a crystal. The moment her words left her lips, a crack appeared along the floor of the chamber, splitting the stone like a wound opening on the skin of the earth itself. The sound was deafening, echoing through the vast space as fissures snaked across the ground toward the crystal. Aiden stumbled back, eyes wide. It's opening something. Before they could react, the walls of the chamber shuddered again, and the crystal flared with an intensity that threatened to blind them. Then, the whole space seemed to warp. The air twisted, reality itself bending around them. Time, space, and place dissolved into a shimmering vortex of light. Suddenly, they were no longer in the chamber. They were in a vast, open space, a swirling vortex that looked both endless and suffocating. The ground beneath them had vanished entirely, leaving them suspended in a place where nothing seemed real. The sky, if you could call it that, was an ever-changing kaleidoscope of colors, stretching into infinity. In the center of the void stood a colossal door, its frame adorned with symbols and runes that shimmered like the stars. What is this? Naira whispered, stepping cautiously forward. Her voice seemed to echo, though there was no sound, no source. I think we've crossed into something we're not supposed to, Aiden said, scanning their surroundings. That crystal, it wasn't just a key. It's a gate. A low, almost melodic hum filled the air, vibrating through their bones. The door before them began to creak open, slowly at first, as though it were reluctant to reveal what lay beyond. From within the darkened threshold, a cold wind blew, carrying with it the scent of ancient dust and decay. The door opened wide enough for them to see the faintest outline of figures standing in the shadows, tall, imposing shapes that seemed to shimmer and distort as though they were not entirely of this world. Their forms flickered like mirages, half-formed but undeniably real. Aiden stepped forward instinctively, his eyes narrowing. He wasn't sure what they were, but he could feel their presence, pressing in from every side. A deep sense of foreboding settled in his stomach. Are those beings? Naira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Aiden didn't answer immediately. He was too focused on the figures. They seemed to be waiting for them, as though they had been summoned here for a reason. Before he could speak, one of the figures moved forward. No, stepped forward, crossing the threshold of the gate with a fluid motion that defied the natural laws of movement. Its eyes, or what passed for eyes, glowed with an ethereal light, piercing through the shadows. It was a being of energy, its form shifting constantly, wrapped in robes that seemed woven from the fabric of the very void around them. You have entered the gate of time, the figure said in a voice that reverberated through their minds, not through their ears. Its tone was both cold and ancient, as though it had been waiting eons for someone to step into this place. Naira clenched her fists, her stance defensive. What do you want with us? The figure's form rippled, and Aiden could feel the air grow colder, the tension rising. It is not what we want. It is what you need. You have been brought here to fulfill the final trial. The choice is yours. You may return to the Labyrinth and continue your quest, or you may pass through this gate and experience time as it truly is. In this realm, you may glimpse the past, the future, and learn the secrets of the Labyrinth. But be warned, the price for knowledge is steep. Aiden's heart raced. His eyes flicked to Naira, then back to the being. The decision ahead of them was immense, almost incomprehensible. On the one hand, they could continue with their journey, hoping to find a way out, but on the other, they were being offered something that could grant them power, knowledge of the Labyrinth's true purpose, perhaps even the means to escape, but at what cost? How steep? Aiden asked, trying to steady his voice, though the words felt heavier than he intended. The figure's gaze turned, if it could be called that, toward him. Time is a cruel master. It gives and it takes. The knowledge you seek will come at a personal price, but what you will learn will change the very fabric of your reality. The choice is yours. The silence in the chamber was suffocating, each second stretching longer than the last. Naira, Aiden said, his voice soft but firm. We've come this far. We need to know. We need the truth. She looked at him for a long moment and then nodded, her expression resolute. Let's do it. Whatever it costs, we'll face it together. The figure before them seemed to acknowledge their decision, a wave of energy cascading from it like a gentle breeze. It rippled through the air, and the door swung open fully. Then, step forward. The truth awaits. Aiden and Naira didn't hesitate. They stepped forward into the unknown, their bodies surrounded by the energy that hummed with the pulse of 1,000 worlds. As they crossed the threshold of the gate, the world around them collapsed in on itself. Chapter 9. The Chronicles of the Labyrinth. The moment Aiden and Naira stepped through the gate, they were submerged in a realm unlike anything they had experienced. The vibrant, swirling void they had crossed now gave way to an ever-shifting landscape. an endless sea of light and shadow. Time here was not linear. It was fractured, stretched, and warped like shattered glass. The air crackled with a strange, electrifying energy that made their skin tingle with every breath. Around them, images of the past and future flickered in and out of existence, like fragments of broken memories. There were flashes of distant worlds, forests burning beneath crimson skies, cities rising from dust, ships sailing through nebulous clouds of light. All of it was intertwined, layered upon each other, creating a web of existence that was too vast to comprehend. Aiden felt himself being pulled in different directions, as if his very soul was being tugged through the fabric of time. He staggered, grasping Nira's arm for support. "What is this place?" Nira's eyes scanned the ever-shifting landscape, her expression unreadable. "I don't know, but this is where the labyrinth's true secrets lie, isn't it? This is the heart of it, the source of its power." As she spoke, the images around them began to coalesce into a single form. A great, dark figure appeared, shrouded in shadow. It stood tall and imposing, its eyes glowing with an unnatural, haunting light. The air around it was thick with power, an ancient presence that seemed to distort the very space around it. The figure spoke, its voice deep and resonant, reverberating in the very core of their beings. "You have entered the realm of the labyrinth's true knowledge. Here time and memory intertwine, and the past, present, and future are one. What you seek is here, but be warned. The truth comes at a cost. It always does." Aiden's heart raced as he tried to process the enormity of the moment. "What is this place? What do you want from us?" The figure tilted its head, as if considering the question. "We want nothing from you. You are here because you have crossed the threshold, because you sought answers. You wish to understand the labyrinth, to uncover the secrets of its creation, its purpose, its very existence. But understand this, the truth you seek is not free. Every piece of knowledge you gain will tear at the fabric of your being, shaping you in ways you cannot foresee." Nira stepped forward, her expression firm. "We'll bear the cost. We've come this far, there's no turning back." The figure nodded, its form shifting in response to her words. "Very well, but know this. The price you pay will not be measured in mere actions or pain. It will be measured in time. What you learn here will change your understanding of reality itself. You will see the true origin of the labyrinth, the reason for its creation, and the purpose behind your journey." The figure's form dissolved into the air, leaving behind a vast stone archway that materialized from the swirling darkness. Beyond it, the flickering images solidified into something more tangible. Memories, moments, echoes of lives long past. The archway beckoned them forward, the air rippling with energy, pulling them toward the truth that awaited. Aiden glanced at Nira, her face determined but worn, as if she had already come to terms with the cost of what was about to happen. Without another word, they stepped through. They found themselves in a vast, dark chamber, its walls adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to shift and pulse, depicting scenes of creation, destruction, and the rise and fall of civilizations. In the center of the room stood a massive stone table, its surface carved with runes that seemed to hum with energy. The moment they entered, the room illuminated, casting long shadows against the walls. A figure appeared in the center of the room, materializing from the shadows as if it had always been there. This one was different from the first. The being before them was tall, its features sharp and regal, its robes flowing like liquid silver. Its eyes were ancient, filled with a deep wisdom that seemed to stretch across millennia. "I am the keeper of the chronicles," the figure said, its voice resonating with a power that seemed to echo through the very air. "I am the one who holds the knowledge of the labyrinth, its past, its creation, its purpose. You stand before the heart of its truth." Aiden swallowed hard. "What is this place? Why did the labyrinth exist?" The keeper's eyes gleamed, as if amused by the question. "The labyrinth was created as a prison, yes, But it was not built to contain a monster or a god. It was built to hold time itself. The labyrinth is a living construct, one that binds the past and future, keeps them from collapsing in on each other. It was not built by any mortal hand, but by an ancient race, the architects, who understood the dangers of time itself. They sought to control it, to ensure that time did not unravel. They built the labyrinth as a means of containment, a place where the flow of time could be manipulated, shaped. Nira stepped forward, her voice sharp with disbelief. But that doesn't explain why we're here. Why are we in the labyrinth? What do we have to do with this? The keeper's gaze softened. You are here because you are the key to its final trial. The architects knew that one day, time itself would grow unstable, and the labyrinth would no longer be able to contain it. They designed the trials you have faced as a way to test those who would come to the heart of the labyrinth. If you succeed, you will have the power to reshape time itself, to save the labyrinth from the chaos that now threatens it. But be warned, even the power to control time comes at a terrible cost. Aiden's mind reeled. Control time, what are you asking of us? The keeper's eyes darkened, and the shadows in the room grew deeper. I am not asking. I am telling you. The labyrinth is dying. Its power is fading. Time is slipping through the cracks, and soon it will collapse into chaos. You have the ability to fix it, or to destroy it completely. The question is, will you accept the burden? Will you bear the cost of changing time itself? Aiden's heart pounded in his chest. The weight of the decision was overwhelming. Could they really reshape time? Should they even try? The cost? What was it? What price would they have to pay? He glanced at Nira, who met his gaze with a look that mirrored his uncertainty, but also his resolve. We came here to survive, Nira said, her voice firm. We came here to escape, but now, we're being asked to make a choice that could change everything. Aiden nodded, his jaw set. Then let's choose wisely. Chapter 10. The final trial. The moment the keeper's words settled into the air, a heavy silence followed, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Aiden and Nira stood in the heart of the labyrinth, the weight of the decision pressing down on them with every passing second. The air was thick, suffused with the knowledge of ages, and the swirling memories of past lives seemed to echo through the chamber, each one whispering a warning, or perhaps a plea. Aiden's pulse quickened. Time itself felt brittle in this place, as though even a wrong thought could shatter the fabric of reality. He turned toward Nira, his mind whirling with the impossible burden they were being asked to bear. The power to control time, to reshape it, to stop the labyrinth's inevitable collapse. Was it worth it? Could they handle such power without destroying themselves in the process? Nira's gaze was unwavering, her face set with a determination that matched his own. Aiden, we didn't come this far to back down now. We've seen the consequences of a world out of balance. We've faced impossible odds, survived monsters, and navigated the very edges of time. We've already paid a price, haven't we? But we can't walk away from this. Her words hit him like a wave crashing on the shore, drowning out all the doubts that had begun to cloud his mind. She was right. They had already sacrificed so much. The labyrinth wasn't just some ancient maze. It was a living testament to the fragility of time. If they turned their backs now, the consequences would be even worse. But could they really reshape time itself? Could they handle such power? The keeper's eyes gleamed, as though it had been waiting for them to make their choice. The trial. Before you is the greatest of all. Once you make your decision, there will be no turning back. Time, once altered, cannot be restored. It will ripple through the world, changing everything it touches. The question remains, will you save the labyrinth? Will you embrace your fate, or will you allow the chaos to consume it? Aiden stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the keeper. His voice steady but filled with purpose. We will save the labyrinth. We'll bear the cost. We're ready. The keeper nodded slowly, and with a flick of its hand, the massive stone table in the center of the room shimmered with light. The runes on its surface pulsed, glowing with an eerie, otherworldly energy. Very well, the final trial begins now. A blinding light engulfed the room, and the air seemed to grow impossibly cold. Aiden and Neera's surroundings warped, twisting, as though the very essence of the labyrinth was being rewritten before their eyes. The walls around them disintegrated, replaced by a vast, endless expanse, a void where time and space no longer held meaning. They were suspended in nothingness, surrounded by swirling fragments of past moments, scattered memories, bits of history, and echoes of the future. The labyrinth's vastness seemed to collapse and stretch at once, folding over itself like a living, breathing entity. Aiden's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the surreal sight before him. The weight of the decision they had made began to sink in. To reshape time, the Keeper's voice echoed. You must first walk through the corridors of the past. Each step you take will alter the course of history. You will relive pivotal moments that have shaped the labyrinth and the world around it. Your choices will determine whether the labyrinth survives or crumbles. Your actions will ripple through time, and every decision you make will carry consequences. Neera clenched her fists, her breath coming faster as the sheer enormity of the trial took hold. What do we need to do? Step into the past. Find the moments of choice, the crossroads where the labyrinth's fate was sealed. Your task is not to alter history for the sake of change, but to understand it. Find the pivotal events, the decisions that led to this moment, and make the choice that will bring balance. Aiden nodded, taking a deep breath. This was it. The final test. It wasn't just about survival anymore. They had to understand the labyrinth's purpose, its history, and how to right the wrongs that had led it to the brink of collapse. A portal opened before them, a swirling vortex of color and light. Without a word, they stepped into it. The first memory they encountered was one of the architects, the beings who had originally designed the labyrinth. They stood in a grand stone chamber, their features sharp and alien, their voices a hum of ancient language. Aiden and Neera watched, from the shadows as the architects argued over the fate of the labyrinth, debating whether to expand its reach or to seal its power away forever. In that moment, they saw the first crack, the decision that led to the labyrinth's eventual corruption. See? The choice, Aiden? Neera whispered, her voice filled with awe. They chose to contain time, but they didn't foresee how time would fight back, how it would twist their creation. Aiden nodded, his gaze fixed on the architects as they made their final decision. Their actions set the labyrinth on a course that would lead to its eventual instability. The fate of the world was now in their hands. This was the moment they had to influence, not to change, but to understand. The portal shifted, and they were pulled forward, past countless echoes of the past. They saw worlds rise and fall, battles waged, and civilizations built and destroyed. Each scene seemed to overlap with the last, blending together in an ever-moving tapestry of history. Finally, they arrived at the last pivotal moment, the moment that defined the collapse of the labyrinth. It was here, deep within the heart of the labyrinth, that the final decision had been made. A single figure stood before a massive, pulsing crystal, its energy crackling with the power of 1,000 lifetimes. The figure reached out, fingers trembling as they brushed the crystal's surface. Aiden recognized the figure. It was them, or rather a version of them, standing at the crossroads of time. Will you release the labyrinth's power? The Keeper's voice asked, its presence enveloping them. Will you give it the freedom to shape the world once more? Aiden's heart pounded. This was their choice. This was the moment they had to face. Release it, Neera said, her voice steady, resolute. We've seen what happens when time is contained, when it's trapped. We can't imprison the future. We need to let it flow, let it grow. Aiden hesitated, but only for a moment. The choice was clear. They couldn't control time, couldn't bind it to a single unchanging path. They had to let it unfold. He stepped forward, his hand touching the crystal. The moment his fingers made contact, everything changed. The labyrinth began to shift around them, the walls fading away, replaced by the endless horizon of the world. Outside, time, like a floodgate, broke free. The labyrinth was no longer a prison. It was a bridge, a conduit that connected past, present, and future. The very fabric of reality was restored. Aiden and Naira stood in the center of the labyrinth. No longer just survivors, but agents of change. Time was no longer a force to be feared, but a force to be understood and embraced. The Keeper's voice echoed one final time. You have done it. The labyrinth is reborn. But remember, time is never still. It will always move forward. Your actions have shaped its path. Now you must walk it. Aiden turned to Naira, his heart full. They had faced the unimaginable, and together, they had changed the world. The labyrinth was no longer a prison. It was a place of possibility. Together, they walked forward, knowing that the journey was just beginning. The end. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Let me know in the comments what ideas you would like the next story to be about. Please leave a thumbs up, share, subscribe, comment.